Alright everyone, so for my presentation in Rant, I'm going to present to you the Antikythera Mechanism, also known as Oh, holy heck, the ancient Greeks were smart! So for this story, we are going to a tiny island that's in the Aegean Sea between Crete and Athens, and so located right over there. And in 1901, a group of sponge divers discovered a Roman shipwreck by the shores of this island. And they did the right thing by contacting the authorities, an archaeologist and a historian that went and retrieved the different items found within the shipwreck. So they found Greek artifacts, which kind of suggested that that was stuff that the Roman pillaged during a raid. So statues, vases, coins, and all the jewelry, the usual antique Greek treasure. And thanks especially to the vases and the amphoras and the coin, they were even able to date it to around 65 to 60 BC. And among all the items found in this shipwreck, they also found this. I know, looks like a corroded lump of metal because that's kind of what it is. That lump of bronze was only examined the following year by experts, and they discovered that it actually had gears on it. And you can kind of tell some of the teeth, and the teeth are fairly small, like 1 millimeter long. So the historian actually the lump was separated in three parts, but looking at this and the different gears, they considered that this item was maybe too advanced to be Greek and to fit the other, and just randomly fell just on the exact site of the shipwreck. So it was just left in storage in the National Archaeological Museum of Athens for the following years because they didn't really had anything to do with it, and they just forgot about it. Then, in 1971, this professor, Derek the Solar Prize, I'm not going to have a test with the names, it's just to give credit where credit is due, got interested in this story and actually used X-ray imagery to try and see what was inside of that lump. And this is what he saw. He saw not just one big gear, but an assortment of a bunch of tiny gears, 27 in this one fragment named Fragment A alone, and the whole machine was estimated to have between 50 and 60 total. Those images, more importantly, allowed the researchers to be able to start counting the teeth, although it was a very slow process because they had to count it manually. But the major issue was more that it was only a 2D image, so it's absolutely impossible to tell which one is which one is on top of the others, and so on. So again, that's that was a step to understand what the hell that thing was, but that kind of stopped there. And then in the early 2000s, a mathematician named Tony Frith actually got interested again in this story, and this time he contacted an X-ray machine company to tell them, hey, could you help us find out more about that lump of bronze? And he actually managed to indeed convince them to bring an 8-ton X-ray machine prototype to Athens to scan the damn thing. And the reason why that machine was so heavy is because it's not giving just a 3D scan, it's going layer by layer to give a 3D image of the object and not just a flat thing. And this is what it looked like. Now, I'm going to change for a second to the actual video of the layers that are shown through the imagery. And this is what the researchers saw. And if we just speed up this thing a tiny bit, we can see that there is a bunch of different gears involved. Again, like 27 in this one fragment, and they are layered, and they have very minute teeth and interlocking. So that's the point where the historians were starting to go, okay, what is this? Why was this there? And how the hell did it work? So because again they had those images that are now very detailed of the inner working, but they still had no idea what those gears were meant to do. It's nice to have pictures of gears, it's better to know what the hell they do. And to know what they do, they actually got clues from another imagery technique. Now this was an advanced photography technique that essentially uses a big dome with a bunch of lights that take pictures with like a bunch of different light angle, so that the very thin detail on the surface that were corroded were a lot more visible. And when I say a dome, I mean a dome. Like, I think there is like 50 different light angle in total on that thing. And it turns out that there was text on the fragments, and that text was again ancient Greek, which kind of starts to align to this thing actually belonging to the shipwreck, even though again we are talking about a machine that has like a bunch of cogs 1 millimeter in 60 before Christ. Now, the text on the machine actually mentioned a bunch of different things. It mentioned the Metonic cycle. Now, the Metonic cycle, to keep things brief, ancient Greece used lunar calendars. They were not using the solar calendar that we do. They were using their month was always 20 days long because they were based on the lunar cycle. The issue being that since your month is 28 days long, the whole year is going to be shorter than the actual solar year. And that means that your calendars are becoming out of sync. But the Metonic cycle is the fact that after 19 solar years, those two calendars are in sync again. So the fact that we have this lump of metal with Greek mentions of astrologic cycles is already starting to give us an insane picture of what this thing could actually do. But it didn't mention only that, it also mentioned eclipses. It also has mention of the 5 planets known to ancient Greece: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. It mentions the Pan-Hellenic games, which are the different kind of games organized by the major provinces of ancient Greece, the most famous of them being the Olympic Games. So what did this mechanism actually do? Thanks to reconstitution based on different fragments, they were able to determine that one of the face of the machine had a spiral, and the spiral was to indicate the what part of this lunar and solar calendar you were on. So you can actually see the spiral going on with all the division, and so based on the position of the dial, you would be able to tell, okay, so this is the lunar month, and this is the corresponding solar month. And there is even this tiny dial that you can see that also indicates the current game. So if you're wondering when's the next Olympic game, this dial would tell you. But if that was this already, that would be an incredible feat of technology, because in ancient Greece they had nothing that would compare to this. But that's not all, because then there is the prediction of eclipses based on Babylonian knowledge. And it was not just like a vague, it would be able to tell you if the eclipse was a lunar eclipse, if it was a solar eclipse, at what time of day it would happen, and what color it would have. And this is, again, a piece of technology that's before Christ. That's such amazing. And the tiny thing that you can see on the side in this diagram is the knob, because the gears suggest that essentially this machine was powered by simply turning a handle or a crank or something, and just by turning it you would have the dial spin until you get to the correct position. But wait, there's more, because if you paid attention, you noticed that I said that the slide said side A, because there is a side B. And this side B displays, with a system of rings and dials, the date of whatever time within that 19-year cycle you would be, the position on this date of the sun, of moon, of Mercury, of Venus, of Jupiter. And again, by the turn of a single knob. That you could get information about the position of celestial bodies at any point in this 19 cycles time. And there is even suggestion that the moon dial actually could tell you the phases with a little marble with a white side and a black side that would spin around and and be to the correct position to tell you if it's like a full moon, a new moon, and so on and so forth. And again, if you think that so you have this construct that has two sides that are able to tell a bunch of things about the stars that dates back from ancient Greece with gears that are 1 millimeter teeth long. But there is even more to this because they included advanced movement of the planets. The machine with the gift that you can see here with that little groove, you can see that there is a gear with a little groove. That groove alone represents the difference in the speed of the moon around the Earth, because the orbit of the moon around the Earth is not a perfect circle, it's an ellipse, which means that sometimes the moon is closer to the Earth and sometimes it's further away. And when it's closer to the Earth, the moon goes faster, and when it's further away from the Earth, it goes slower. And if you pay attention to the GIF, you can see that there is actually a difference in the speed at which the gears turn, which means that ancient Greek people were able to reproduce speed variation of objects around the Earth with simple gears. Can you tell why I'm excited to talk about this? And the planet dial is even more complex because it doesn't include just a straight line. It includes the fact that from the Earth's perspective, the planets don't go in a straight line in the night sky. The only thing in the night sky that go in a straight line is the sun and the moon, because the Earth spins around the sun and the moon spins around us. But for instance, Mars spins around the sun. It doesn't spin around us. And that means that sometimes, as shown in this picture up on the top left corner, Mars can go back and forth. And that's exactly, if you look at the animated GIF, you can actually see that the different planet dials don't go simply in one direction. Sometimes they just stop and go backward. That's completely insane for a machine that was from 60 before Christ. So who built this thing? The text on the machine suggests that it was the Corinthian, because the name on the lunar calendar are from names that were used in Corinthia or in Corinthian colonies. The Corinthian names had bigger lettering than the Olympic Games, which seems like a very petty thing to do, but also seems to, again, corroborate the idea that it was from Corinthia. And later study of both Roman and Greek texts from Cicero and so on suggests that there were such machines that existed, because there are mentions of a globe that showed the position of the planet being built by Archimedes, which, fun fact, Archimedes lived in Syracuse. Syracuse was a Corinthian colony, just saying. And those machines also were reported to exist after the estimated date of the shipwreck, which means that the Antikythera mechanism is not even one of a kind. There were multiple of those things that existed in ancient Greece. They had mechanical computers all the way back in 60 BC. So this is a reconstitution of what the machine is considered to have looked like. And again, to summarize, precise gears, 1 millimeter teeth in 60 BC without like proper like modern tool or like very rudimentary glasses and so on. Like you couldn't even use precise machinery. They all had to build every single gear by hand. Just by turning this single crank on the side of this machine, you would have information on the date at whatever time in the future or the past, the pairing of the lunar and solar calendars, the position of all known celestial bodies, and their relation to the zodiac, which I didn't mention, but those rings on the outside of the planet dials are the zodiac, the current Paleolithic games, and the next eclipse. And that such complex clockwork would never be seen again in the entire world until the 14th century with the Renaissance and astronomical clocks. The knowledge of those gears were passed through the Byzantine Empire to Middle Eastern cultures, but even then, with the astrolabes and other astronomical tools, they never met this level of complexity. And this is only over a millennia and near a half later that we got back to this. So if you want to learn the full story, because I did a shorter version and there is a bunch of things about numbers and how the numbers of the main thing that helped the researcher find out about the different function of the machine was the number of teeth on the different gears that would match specific numbers in ancient Greek astrology. You can find a full documentary done by the BBC about Antikythera Mechanism, the 2,000 years old computer, that is actually available on YouTube. But again, beware, it involves math. And with that, thanks everyone for your attention.